being neurodivergent is so hot right now.
So hot right now. I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah.
Want to watch the Dungeon Dudes with me?
I really do. I actually really do. I'm excited about this video.
Greetings, my name is Monty Martin.
And I'm Kelly McLaughlin.
And we are the Dungeon Dudes. And
Can I just say how much they have just mastered eliminating the boomer breath, the millennial pause. They got right in there, and I love that.
Smack-a-boom, yeah.
For them and for us. I guess we should tell who are we and why are we watching this?
Yeah. Yes, this is my friend Alison.
It's my friend Matt.
And we have a podcast called ADHd20 that finds the intersection between ADHD and
TTRPGs.
That's right. That's right. That's why we were super excited about this video. So we're going to watch it for the very first time and comment live.
This is a blind reaction. Let's go. Let's dive in. All right. Sorry to keep interrupting you, Kelly and Monty. We're ready now.
We're both neurodivergent.
And that means that as much as we love D&D, sometimes our brains get in the way of us really enjoying all that D&D has to offer.
In our years of playing D&D, we've learned a lot about what works best for us at our tables, and today we want to talk about some tips and strategies that have worked for us that maybe you can try out if you're navigating neurodiversity in yourself, your friends, or in your gaming group more broadly.
There's a lot to discuss today, so let's get rolling.
Yes.
Love the intro. Love the Canadianness. Love the neurodivergence.
Now, in true neurodiverse fashion, we're just going to switch tracks for a moment to share our hyper-focus, which has been Kelly and I are writing another book.
Our new book, Monsters of Drakkenheim, is now live on Kickstarter. This book introduces over 150 brand new monsters inspired by our world of Drakkenheim, which is full of cosmic horror, dark fantasy, and faction.
And it's really phenomenal, by the way. If people have not taken the time or the money to purchase this, it's a beautiful campaign world.
Here's the thing. So we did this kind of reaction style video for a video that Jenny D recently put out, right? And in that video, Jenny kind of encapsulated what you and I have always tried to explain to people who are not as familiar with ADHD and how the name of it is such a misnomer, right? Attention deficit. It's not so much that we're operating at a deficit. It's that we're operating with attention control.
Yes.
And so I love, people will, if we get something done, sometimes people will look at us and be like, how'd you manage to do that? You have ADHD. Wow.
Yes. That is so true. And sometimes I think that about other people with ADHD.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how did you do that?
You have ADHD. And I think that Monty and Kelly are the perfect examples of look at all that they have been able to put out and create for the greater TTRPG, community, including what they have coming out now. And they're telling us that they're neurodivergent because they have learned how to tap into that beautiful, beautiful thing called hyperfixation. Teach us. We want to know. Let's see if they'll reveal their secrets to us.
It's a crafting system built around fighting really cool monsters and making cool magic items for adventurers. We're super proud of it and hope you'll want to check that out as well.
But now let's refocus, get back on track, and discuss neurodiversity.
Neurodiversity describes a very broad spectrum of the ways in which human brains differ from one another in how they behave, process, and function.
Neurodiversity reminds us that people do think differently. Some might be introverts, while others have various different learning styles or social anxieties. Others may have diagnosed or undiagnosed cognitive conditions such as ADHD, autism, dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, depression, OCD, and a wide range of other possible.
Okay. It's funny that they're using the phrase neurodiversity and not just neurodivergence. Did you clock that?
Well,
I think that's so interesting.
But I have been corrected before where someone said, you're not your brain is neurodivergent. Mm-hmm. So they're talking about the
neurodiverse community. Yeah, yes. I love that. I love that. Yeah. All right.
We're neurodiverse.
We're neurodiverse and neurodivergent. Yeah. Well, and have neurodivergent. We're still learning too, right alongside y'all.
There's a really long list of neurodiversity. And so because of that, everybody's going to be a little bit different with how they engage in D&D.
In particular, though, I think that there are so many things about Dungeons and Dragons and tabletop role-playing games more broadly that often are really interesting and exciting to neurodiverse people. And I think that neurodiversity can actually bring a lot of strength and creativity to the Dungeons and Dragons experience, but it also comes along with many challenges and obstacles to enjoying the game specifically. And sometimes the struggles that neurodiverse people experience can be really hard to see or detect for their friends, their party members, and often even themselves.
At the table, neurodiverse people can experience many challenges, such as difficulty communicating with others or getting into character, irritability, lack of focus, or even the opposite, hyperfocus.
Sometimes neurodiverse people can feel very overstimulated or burnt out, or just get mental exhaustion that is really hard to recover from after a long game session.
Okay, I want to bring something up that he has just kind of custom tied, I think, the next topic I want to talk about with you on ADHd20 episode. In our Discord today, so we just did a Dagger Heart combat practice for the first time live for anybody who wanted to come watch it on our YouTube channel, and it was a ton of fun. And I got the honor and privilege of being the game master. And so somebody wanted to know how we felt with this new system about the initiativeless combat. And my answer was that as a GM, I loved it because it was one less thing for me to have to keep track of. And that's something as neurodiverse GMs we struggle with a lot. Is just you have so many plates spinning and you got to give each one its due course, right? Yeah. But I'm worried about how I'm going to approach Daggerheart as a player because when I get overstimulated, I shut down. Right? You've all seen it. And so like having to constantly like control the impulse gremlin inside of me physically wears me down.
Yeah.
And I can already foresee that I'm going to have to do a lot of that impulse control work at the table.
Interesting.
And so I just think it's interesting that we're already making a nod to the effects physically and emotionally, you know, that our neurodivergence can have on us.
And to that point as well, is I tend to thrive sometimes in the deepest of chaos. It's not that I don't get worn out as well. To their point, though, that even in the same situations, our brains that are both riddled with ADHD react very differently.
For sure. All right.
Feeling overstimulated or burnt out, they can then be slow to take their turn or decide what to do, or even struggle with adding up the dice or the math.
They could be forgetful about the small details of the campaign or the NPCs and characters or even the rules of D&D.
Okay, I'm sorry. That is me as a player. And that's partly why I have a harder time being a player. I get really upset with myself because I have a hard time remembering, knowing the rules. I forget things that I want, cool things that I want to do. That's me right there.
The truth of the matter is that just as there is no one way to play Dungeons and Dragons, there is no one-size-fits-all solution for navigating the challenges that neurodiversity brings when you're playing D&D. We're not experts in this field, and this video is simply based on our personal experiences and what we have found what works for us and those closest to us.
The main point of this video is that everybody needs to discover their own path and what works best for them and their group. The most important tip that we can provide above everything else we're going to mention in this video is to have open communication and constantly check in with your gaming group, making sure that you are all on the same page and making sure that you are expressing your needs and that everybody understands and can work towards bettering your D&D group and the understanding happening at the table.
And it's important to acknowledge that communication itself can be part of one of the struggles. Even coming to realize the ways in which you are neurodivergent and then being able to articulate and communicate what that means for you and how that affects the way that you communicate with other people is a journey.
If you do know our podcast, you know that I practically say this every single episode. But this last statement that Monty said is so freakishly true. I am an older gentleman. It has taken me a long
Jesus,
time
Matt.
to figure out
Yeah.
how, I mean, 50 years of not necessarily knowing what was my ADHD brain and what wasn't.
Yeah.
But you and I together have spent the last 3 years helping me with that. And it is truly a journey, and it is truly constantly shocking all the time.
Yep.
All the time.
I was just going to drop a real life what we recently did in our longest running campaign together. We've been playing Curse of Strahd since 2020 and never really had a session 0 with it. And those of us who play together, we are dear, dear friends. We know each other's quirks and things like that. And we've done so much cool explorations of ourselves in this. But what was really interesting, a lot of times when somebody can't play, we'll either like call off the session or we'll try and do like a side quest and hope nobody gets killed. But a few weeks back, we just decided instead of that, just to have a fireside chat as a group. And we had that chat both in and out of character. And it goes on to kind of what Kelly was just saying, like keeping those lines of communication open. Yeah. It worked so well. And it really made me wonder why it took us 4 years to realize we should be doing that at a fairly regular clip. So I'm interested in the specific tips, of course, that the dungeon dudes are going to share with us. But there's one from your Pocket Dimension ADHd20 friends, your pocket pals, is the biggest, barrier to playing is scheduling. Use those natural schedule breaks because not everybody can play every session. But use that time if the rest of the party can gather to have one of those check-ins, and then hope whoever missed can jump in on the next one. And it really is a lovely way to spend time together.
The first thing that I want to jump in with is making use of clear and well-organized visual aids.
Dungeons and Dragons places a very heavy emphasis on imagination, an internal monologue, written communication, and spoken word communication. For many neurodivergent people, theater of the mind style play can be really, really challenging to keep track and internally visualize everything that is being communicated through words and written communication.
Theater of the mind can be exhausting and confusing to manage. Good visual references can help people remember characters, plan their turns, know and remember what is around them during combat. I hear a lot of people praise Theater of the Mind, and there are elements of the game that I think work really well with Theater of the Mind. For me, social encounters, exploration, those two pillars of play work really well for Theater of the Mind. But when it comes to combat, I struggle if we are Theater of the Mind playing a combat encounter.
So a quick story that just came to me. My brother and I played D&D when we were 10. We were very little, and it was basically first edition right before second edition came out, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. So earlier versions of D&D, they were really not based on maps as much. Okay. You were in fact urged to get a piece of graph paper, and the players were supposed to map out as you dungeon crawled, right? And there's still games that do that, Shadow Dark and other ones that really kind of get into that. And there was a really fun part of that. And I would say that era kind of was the way that you played up until something like Dragonlance, right? When that came in and it became even more story driven. But from the get-go, Evan and I used G.I. Joes and other toys to play Dungeons and Dragons. And now I'm starting to wonder whether I needed to, especially during combat, even though it was, again, not really something. We did not have minis. We didn't have battle maps. But I wanted to know who was fighting who. And we took a long time with weapons and stuff. So yes, this is key. This is very key. It is very hard to do Theater of Mind, especially with combat. Alison.
I did know that you guys played with G.I. Joes. Y'all have made that reference before. Okay. I was actually thinking back to our Dark Ages 2020 when we all started playing together as a result of the pandemic, and we needed something to do to get ourselves out of our own minds and brains, and so we were playing on Zoom. I feel like this was on like the leading edge of this renaissance we're seeing now, right? And so a lot, there obviously were virtual tabletops in 2020. I'm not trying to make it sound like it wasn't, but I feel like a lot of the things that are now more accessible to us as players weren't as accessible way back then. We've just seen so much growth in the past 4 years. So we were playing with a DM who is actually also neurodivergent. And I remember like trying to play all of this theater of the mind. I remember wondering if something was wrong with me, that I just wasn't getting it. And I remember, though, the simplest shift that we made collectively, and I don't even remember who made it, is that we were playing on Zoom. So Jeff would just start sharing his screen, and there's the annotate feature. And he would just start using the pen in Zoom just to draw little X's. Yeah. And that was literally all it took. It didn't require some big, fancy, expensive anything. It was just, that time, the 5 or 6 of us sitting around a Zoom screen, drawing X's into a white box to figure out. It was so janky, but it worked. And I remember the colossal shift in my brain of like, oh, now I get it.
The one thing that I do find is very helpful, though, if your game master loves theater of the mind, is not going to give you a map, and you know that this is something that's tough for you, I have found that if I have a little piece of paper or a notebook or something, and I'm just scribbling and kind of constantly taking notes. I don't mean notes like we met this NPC and we did this and we went into this place. I mean like my character is standing at this. This character is doing this. This person just attacked. It's useless later. It's gibberish. But at that moment, I'm a little more locked in. So if anybody else is having that issue, doesn't want to try to map things, try that.
You're a born note taker, though. That was something that came out in Jenny D's recent video as well. Be the note taker.
Notes. It helps.
Be the note taker.
When we talk about visual assets and battle maps and all of that, the one key element that stands out is virtual tabletops, which they work as a bit of a double-edged sword. They can be great for organizing information in an accessible way. When you play on a VTT, all of the information is right in front of you. You know very clearly where the tokens are, where the enemies are, the player characters, what sort of environment you're in. There's a lot of tools at your disposal that can smooth out some of the intricacies of D&D.
On the other hand, different virtual tabletops manage information and data differently. Yeah. Some virtual tabletops are very data forward. Some are very automation heavy. I'm thinking of ones like Foundry or Fantasy Grounds. Others are much, much more lightweight, like Owlbear Rodeo. Depending on how your group processes information, you might find that a very information-dense VTT like Foundry is a little too much to manage. And you might need to either make less use of Foundry's more powerful features or consider a VTT that is much more basic like Owlbear Rodeo.
Or one of my personal favorites, Encounter Plus, which no one, and I mean no one, ever seems to talk about. And I feel like I have to constantly talk about Encounter Plus, because if you want somewhere in the expanse between Foundry, which, as they say, can be extremely beautiful and intense, and automation and all of that. Yeah. And Owlbear, which is very, very agnostic and easy to get set up. Try Encounter Plus. It's only for Mac and iOS.
I think that's
and I know that's why, but I have to plug it because it's so well done and so well thought out. And if you are a Windows user, but you have an iPad, it runs incredibly well on iPad.
Yeah, I will say
we're not sponsored by Encounter Plus. I'm such a fan of it.
You kind of switch between Encounter Plus and Foundry, but I'm having a crush lately on Owlbear Rodeo. And I think the reason, and we've talked about this on the podcast before, apparently it is a common tenet for anybody with ADHD, but it's a very prevalent in women with ADHD. This almost obsession with perfection. I would rather not do something at all than not do it perfectly. And And so sometimes these I like that they call it dense, these data heavy ones, because there are so many facets that I don't get.
Yeah.
I would rather just go with something like very base level and simple.
I get it.
As both a neurodivergent and woman, I think that might have something to do with it, where my brain just kind of nopes out of things if I don't immediately. It's this. If I am not immediately good at something, I want nothing to do with it. And sometimes I feel that way about technology.
Yeah. I think a lot of people do. Yep.
This next point, which is it removes distractions. And this is a huge element for, I find myself, and for many different types of neurodiverse people, particularly those that might deal with autism or ADHD, removing distractions from the table really can help with focus and staying in the game.
One of the biggest distractions of the game table is the group size. I have played in and ran games for 6 or more people, and I have found those games incredibly exhausting. For me, the best group size is 3 to 4 people. Both as a DM and a player, I prefer this. As a DM, it means that I get to divvy out the spotlight a lot easier.
It really, really does make that much of a shift in focus, attention, and distraction.
Where do you lie on that, Alison?
I see what they're saying, and I don't fundamentally disagree. However, one of my favorite tables that I ever played at was a table of, I believe there were 6 of us. I think 6 is about the cap. Anything over 6 is absolutely ridiculous. But I'm good with 5 or 6 of people who are dedicated to playing a great game.
Sure.
And that's the thing, is like, I could absolutely see where, especially when we talk about things like public games and when you're playing in sea of unfamiliarity, how that could get a little bit dicey above 4. But what I appreciated about having a party size of 6 was the diversity and kind of the cast that we were playing. Whereas sometimes I do feel hampered in like our smaller party. Like we do have a party that's you and 3 players, me being one of them, that sometimes there's just not a lot that we can do. You know, we're kind of hamstrung a little bit. So I appreciate those larger tables, but again, it kind of comes back to that open communication.
Yeah.
Because over 5 can absolutely swim in chaos. So I would say my personal sweet spot would be 4 or 5, no more than 6. 3 feels a little small for me. How do you feel?
I'm always fighting for less. I'm always fewer people. And for the exact reasons that they're speaking to, because I feel, I just get overwhelmed. But you're right. If it is a crackerjack team of players, it is less of an issue.
Yes.
If there are new players mixed in and we get to 5 or 6, it's real hard. And one thing I've always been very clear about saying is, when you are new, play with experienced players. There's nothing in this world that's going to help you more, even though that can feel very daunting. That's very true.
But I do get there has to be a balance. It can be like 1, maybe 2 new players, because if you have a whole group of newbies and then 1 or 2 extremely experienced, that would feel very, very off balance. And at the end of the day, it's all about balance. And I also have to wonder, I mean, what Kelly and Monty are talking about here is kind of specifically D&D, even though they've mentioned other TTRPGs. But I have to wonder, as we kind of continue with this, again, renaissance of all of these games, and like I mentioned, we just played Daggerheart, more of these like narrative driven types of games over like, this is your stat block and therefore this is all that you can do.
Right.
I wonder if that will reduce the burden I feel in a small party. If we can just each do more narratively, would I feel differently? So I might be responding to a particular problem with D&D and not TTRPGs. I might feel differently if we put the scope on just Shadowdark or on just Daggerheart, for instance.
Yes, I like. Okay.
But there can be other forms of sensory overload that occur during a D&D game. There's a lot of dungeon masters out there that have a lot of passion for creating an immersive environment at their game tables. And I don't want to denigrate dungeon masters who do this, because I think you're awesome. But for me personally, musical soundtracks, flashing lights, these sorts of things are not things that work for me, and I generally don't use them in my games because I find them so distracting and disorienting. Even I know that, there's the background track that we put on our own DRAKKENHEIM games, but that's not playing in real life.
Yeah, it works better that it's something that's added in post for us.
Yeah.
I do play music in my games, but if Monty was playing at my table, I would turn the music off for him.
I actually remember asking, can we turn the music off, because I found it so distracting.
Yeah. And we love having light up LEDs in our Dwarven Forge, but if you're putting on strobe lights and all of that, and there's smoke machines and sound effects of battles happening, that can be really distracting for some people. So making sure that you know what the sensory needs of your table are is going to be really important.
You know what? Yeah. Another one.
Sorry, he's going to go into another one, but I didn't want to miss the chance to say that we have run into this issue as well on our tables. And for the longest time, but in a different way, in the way that as a GM, I cannot, number one, I don't care that much about music. I'm more like Monty. I really don't. I don't listen to it a lot. A lot of people need to have it all the time in their life. So I'm not knocking them at all, but it is always an afterthought. It is never, I like it when it's there, but it's never something I ever give great time to. And I think we have recently found the solution for that. And that is, if there is a player,
make Evan do it.
Find a freaking DJ. Just find a DJ for your table. And I thought that was going to be tougher because as a GM, I am the one who knows what's happening next. How is Evan, my brother, how is he going to, arrange tracks to be ready for that? Well,
call an audible.
He just does it. Yeah, he has some tracks that he likes that he's put together. He enjoys music. He enjoys sound design. And so he can feel, he knows when combat's about to start just as easily as I'm about to know. It's like we could make it, if that wasn't satisfying enough for your players, you can give him a folder of ambient sounds or something and really let him go to town. But we've discovered Kinku.fm that plays music using Discord. You connect it to a channel. I gave a key to Evan and he was able to, and he's just, it's really great. Really great.
This kind of fits in with separate but very related discussion we had in a recent episode of our own, where we were talking about finding the things in your life that you either don't have time for or don't enjoy. Find the friends that do find joy in those things, and then trade. Don't dump things on people. Yeah. Right. But I use the example then of I am all of my friends' cover letter writer, and I edit any written text they ever need. Yeah. Please don't ever ask me to make a spreadsheet, but I have friends who will do that for me. Right. And I think if we all approached more in life in that way of finding the things that this isn't my thing. I'm just going to outsource this to you. You and I do this. You and I are learning how to co-DM. There are aspects of DMing that you find exhausting that I love, and vice versa. So why not say, Matt, I need you to help me with the maps. I don't want to find maps. You love to find maps.
I do.
And so why can't I just say, Matt, I need a battle map that's going to be taking place in a forest, and I need something that looks like it's inside of a tavern. Yep. And that's one thing that would stop me from DMing, that would stop me from providing an experience to my players that you can do so well and so easily.
Or even worse, with someone with ADHD, it's something that you slightly dread and you put it off in the last minute. And so and that adds to the anxiety at the table, because you're like, I didn't really get this map done. I really should have, and you're aware.
Crunching.
Just
outsource it.
Yeah.
We solved it.
We did. And done.
One that can be really subtle but unexpected: candles, and in particularly scented candles.
True.
Right.
Yeah. And so these are things that are often touted as things that add a lot of immersion to the game. But it might be worth discussing with your group whether these things are actually benefiting people and making them feel more immersed, or whether or not they're creating unnecessary distractions that are taking people out of the game because all of these things are present around them. And
hot ADHD tip: if you are somebody like me who does not naturally meditate, get in a dark room and light a candle. there is nothing in this world that will lull me into a trance faster than a flickering flame of candlelight. And that is how I learned to meditate as somebody with ADHD who could not
Oh my
quiet their
God.
thoughts.
I feel the exact same way. I didn't know. I mean, it is a meditation practice, but that helps me so much with meditation.
Yoga is the same. If you need, like, when you're trying to get into your poses, we'll have candles at different points in the room. So if I'm having a hard time getting and or staying into a pose, I'll find a candle focal point. Calms me right down. But to the point being made here is that, like, one person's yuck is someone else's yum. So like being sensitive to that, and I wouldn't make you sit in a room with candles if you were distracted by them.
No, and I was going to say that accessibility, inclusivity itself. They just said it. Ask your table, right? Before you light that candle. Just make sure, because a lot of people don't know. It's not your fault for not knowing.
Yeah.
That is the thing about disability and communicating with a person with a disability, is that if they're a good person, they don't necessarily expect you to know. So it is not like you're being punished. But if you find out that someone that is on the autistic spectrum reacts really strongly to scents, it can physically cause them a pain, a kind of a type of pain, then that you would never want to hurt them. So just make sure that these things are like my brother and Skittles. I would never offer him Skittles. Something about Skittles, man. Just
good person there.
Pulling their attention away in different directions. Of course, there's a whole conversation to be had about phones and things like that, and digital technology at the table. And that's another thing to navigate. I think that different people organize their information in different ways, but it may be worth exploring what are the best options for your group in that respect as well.
All of this contributes to our next major point, which is reducing your mental load. Whether you're reducing your table size or dealing with a sensory overload at your table, all of that's going to reduce your mental load. But there's some other tools that you can use to reduce your mental load. One that I really like is the most used tool in our game, dice. And it's a really simple concept. There are two great ideas that I've seen with dice that can really help out. One, legible dice. I love collecting nifty dice that have intricate designs, but some of the dice I've bought I can't even use at the table. And some specific people might actually benefit from color-coded dice. Some people perceive colors better than shapes. So the D20 and the D12, which all of us have mixed up in our life, it might be better to make the D20 red and the D12 blue, and you know that your red die is the D20 and the one that you got to roll for most things. I've seen sets of dice that each one is a different color, and being able to remember, right, this equals this color is a great tool.
This is one of those big advantages.
Unless you're color vision deficient.
Oh, I know. Bless your heart.
Yeah.
Advantages of using a VTT, because many VTTs will just do the math for you. If you're rolling 10d6, the VTT is going to tell you what you got, and you're not going to have to do that math yourself. Of course, at the table, if you're playing physically, you can use average damage. There's a couple handy tables that you can print out that if you're rolling 10d6, the average of that is 35. So you could just use the average damage instead of having to do the math and just have a quick reference table there instead. Kelly and I were kind of joking about how would it be awesome if there was like some kind of dice that had like an accelerometer or a sensor in them, and you could roll them on a dice tray, and the dice tray would do the math of the.
So I don't know. I'm sure 1,000 people have told them this, but there was something that promised to do this, and they were Bluetooth-enabled dice that could connect to a VTT. And I remember Foundry and Encounter Plus making deals with this company. They were going a Kickstarter, and because this is a touchy subject that is, as a GM, in reducing distractions and mental load, I tend to let the VTT do the work for me. I do not need to roll dice as a GM. In fact, it is just one more thing that I don't like. As a player, of course. And so when y'all, my players, came and said, we really, really want to roll dice, we don't want to use virtual dice, it did make my job a little harder. I did have to do a little bit of thinking about like, okay, so how does that work? I can still target them and Foundry will do this, blah, 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 but I won't do that. Okay. But I was really hoping that those magical Bluetooth dice were going to work, because then, damn it, we
get both. Yeah. One day, hey, we're getting there.
Yeah,
we're getting there.
I mean, that would be an expensive toy, but wouldn't...
We love rolling dice, which it does make sense that if you struggle with math like me, rolling physical dice is awesome, but a dice calculator probably would solve a lot of my problems. So I really wish there was like a mat I could roll on and it just said, hey, you rolled 66 and you got 32.
Someday.
And I'm like, okay, great.
Reducing the mental load really reduces the exhaustion, but eventually you might just get to the point where you are feeling exhausted. And that's why it is important to take breaks regularly. My rule of thumb is take a 10-minute break for every hour that you play. And in many cases, I think it's worth strongly considering having shorter game sessions in general. Those of, say, 2 to 3 hours max, with half an hour in total of breaks during the game session, whether that's 2 15-minute breaks, 1 30-minute, or a bunch of 10-minute breaks.
That's a lot.
I can get on board with like when he said shorter sessions, I was thinking under an hour or less. I feel like it takes us at least 2 hours to kind of get into things. 3 hours is my idea. I will say 4-hour sessions, like I'm mentally drained by the end of them.
And we've played 6-hour sessions and been, jazzed. But yes, I start to want to tap out at
virtual for me is different than in person, I think. Sorry for all my virtual players hearing it here for the first time. I love y'all.
Also true. Yeah.
Breaks.
If you're anything like me, when you first got into D&D, you heard stories of the people who did a whole day of gaming, an 8-hour session or a 12-hour session or anything ridiculous like that. Yeah, I ran a game for 6 people for 8 hours. It was fantastic. And I heard all those stories. And so when I first started DMing, I thought, well, I can do it too. And I ran an 8-hour session that ended in a dragon battle. And I was really, really disappointed in the dragon battle because I ran out of mental steam well before we even got to the dragon battle. And I did not have enough energy to put into that battle to make it awesome. I've learned over the years that it is absolutely okay and essential for me to run a 2 to 3 hour game. And if that's what works for you, tell your group that that's what you're doing and stick to it. I will prepare a good chunk of the game that usually lasts 2 to 3 hours. If we go 3.5 hours, fine. If we go 1.5 hours, fine. The main goal is that I don't want to overdo myself and get to a point where I am no longer putting the energy I should into the game, whether I'm a player or a DM.
One of the other...
So Matt and I have realized over the past year or so of running games with friends on the internet by way of our Patreon that Matt is a campaign DM and I am a one-shot DM. And I think it's important to know what kind of DM you are. And there's no shame in being one or the other. Some people, I'm sure, are both or somewhere in between. But if I can offer anybody any amount of any piece of advice around this as far as GMing goes, especially when you are neurodivergent, you have a lot less time than you think you do. We and we as GMs, I think it becomes our goal to want to pack every second so full of so much fun.
Yep.
And we carry this burden, right? And I'm just here to assure you, first of all, your players are going to have fun. Like, you're together, you're playing a fun game, so you don't have to like micromanage every minute of the session, but you have a lot less time to work with than you think you do. So kind of to Kelly's point here, if you think you have a 3-hour session, you need to plan for 2 hours of that and know that the in-game time will take care of the rest.
Yeah.
Always, and maybe have some back pocket like encounters. I've definitely done that before where I'll say like, if they hit this point and we're way ahead of schedule, have somebody roll a d12 and they can go fight some whatevers.
It is so much easier to add last
than it is
minute
to try and take
in a
away.
lot of ways than it is. I mean, like you said, if you have one little prep, it's like a maybe,
Yep.
the flow chart of your game, just a maybe.
But Matt keeps asking, because I much like Kelly's point about like feeling exhausted. I remember the first couple of one shots I ran for our patrons, I was like out of breath by the end because like I had jammed so much in there. I had thrown 1,000 things a minute at y'all, thinking I had to. Otherwise, you wouldn't have any fun.
Right.
And I got out of it and I realized I hadn't let my players speak. Like I hadn't let any role playing go down. And that was a fault of me as a GM trying to control the board so much. And so I kind of just made a promise to myself from then on. I would come up with my one shots and then I would cut at least one big thing.
Yeah.
Because you just never need that much.
Yep.
So there's our advice there.
Good stuff.
Really important components of taking the break during the game session is make it an actual break where everyone can take their focus away from the game for a moment. For myself as an introverted person, when I take a break, I just want to get on my phone. I want to just kind of go into my own headspace for a couple minutes and disconnect so that I can reconnect with myself and replenish my own mental energy. As opposed to, say, a break where, we're taking a break, but we're still talking about the game and joking around. And really and truly during the break, the dungeon master is actually using the break to get ready for the next encounter. That's a big thing that I'm guilty of doing is like,
same.
I don't actually take a break as the DM.
Yeah.
Everyone else does, but I'm still in it.
I'm trying to
Take
catch up.
the actual break.
Yep.
Put away the game for 10 minutes and let yourself mentally refocus.
I mean, he's not just talking about Dungeons and Dragons.
Yep. Talking about workday too. You gotta
talking about
get
your life.
away from the computer. You gotta take a break from the screen. You gotta
No matter
recognize
how much you love it, no matter
Yep.
how much it like.
I have a rule that when I go out for walks, and most of my friends do not agree with this, I do not take my phone with me. And like, what about podcasts? What about music? Because I am one of those people that does constantly have like background ambient music in. I'm not processing it, right? But I know that if I go on a walk with a phone, I will check it.
Yep.
I will want to know what's like what I miss on Instagram,
Yep.
what's going on my Discord. So I go on walks in complete silence because it's the only time I know myself enough to disconnect from it.
I'm
Who
not,
are you?
I don't know. I was like, what? Where's my watch? But yes, that is it's charging. But that is the reason why I got an Apple Watch is because it will play the podcasts, but I will not write someone back.
I got rid of my Apple Watch because I was obsessively checking it all the time.
dang.
That's why I don't
Okay.
wear an Apple Watch anymore.
Yeah.
I was even more obsessed with it than I was my phone. I wanted to know what's my heart rate right now, like what notification. Like
Oh, no.
I was constantly like on it, and
Okay.
even on walks, I was like, "Ooh, what was my heart rate 4 minutes ago? What's my heart rate now? How much have I burned? And it totally took it. So I was like, you know what? I stopped. The last Apple Watch I bought was a 4, and I
Interesting.
haven't bought one since for that reason.
To each his own. Yeah.
And replenish. A good time to take a break immediately after a combat encounter.
Yes.
I think it's really important for everybody out there to know when their brain turns to mush. And that's an expression that I use, but I use that when I'm writing, when I'm DMing, when I'm working on any of my projects. The other day I was writing.
Why aren't we best friends with them?
Okay. Can I tell this story?
Yes.
Should I tell it now?
Yeah, I was going to go right back into it, but now we're paused now. Do it.
I went to Gamehole Con last year, and it was a very last minute thing. I went to Gary Con at the beginning of the year with you. I went to Gen Con in the middle of the year with you and others. But I live so close, and I love Madison, so I just went to Gamehole Con, and it was the best of all three. It was such a great experience. It is such a brainy version of all. It's not too big. It's not super focused on one thing. There's lots of really brainy forums and panels and stuff. What were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say the lead into this is that we had gone to Gen Con and had seen a panel with the Dungeon Dudes and Jenny D.
Yes.
And Pointy Hat and D&D shorts.
The intro short, yeah.
And in the panel, Jenny had actually brought up being ADHD. And of course, whenever we hear that, we're like,
Yes.
But we did. We felt like some kind of like just these all just seemed like such great people. And even watching this stuff, I'm like, you're good dudes. So that was kind of our intro to like, we like the dungeon dudes. And then
I went to Gamehole Con and I basically any table that was left, or a game that I wanted to play. So there was a game called Mjorg, but it was but the writer Erica Lowe had her own kind of version, giving it a Nordic vibe. It was so great. She was great. Everything was great. I sit down at this table and I'm ready to play my first time playing this new game, and who sits down next to us but Kelly and Monty? And I have to say, y'all, if in case you were ever wondering, these are two of the nicest dudes I have ever freaking met. They're great players. They are so kind and nice and generous with their. I mean, they were having an amazing time, and they were really engaged. And told Erica this, and then I talked to them about this. I said I have a podcast, ADHd20, and Kelly gave me this look like, yeah, so many people do. That's why I'm so psyched that this video is happening, because he was already implying at that point that, yeah, you don't even know. So it's really fun to see Jenny and them like coming out about this stuff. Yeah. I think it's so important, and I think as we have found with our podcast, so many people do that dance, ADHD, TTRPGs. So yeah, I mean, they're just great people. So hooray.
Writing for our upcoming book, and I was like, ooh, I have a lot of great ideas. And I started writing, and 2 hours later, I just got to a spot and was like, oh, it's happened. And I stood up and went and made a tea and sat on the couch.
Absolutely. I will, even if I plan a full day, like I cannot write for 8 hours.
No,
I just can't. And no. My brain will also turn to mush after about 1 to 3 hours of writing, depending on how it goes. But then also I might get this unexpected spike.
Yeah.
As well, and have to write in another moment. So,
and that goes for playing as well, I think.
Totally. Absolutely. And so in general, I found that reducing the length of our game sessions really was another big thing that helped. And the tandem effect of playing with a smaller group with smaller game sessions is exponential. So once again, I would recommend that if you yourself or several people in your group do struggle with playing D&D due to neurodiversity, I think the number two, like the top two things you can do is limit your game sessions to 2 to 3 hours with 3 to 4 participants. See how that goes, because those two things alone might be the only things you need to do to have a really big impact on the rest of the experience.
Yeah.
So we've already done those things, and I think maybe that's why we have a 4-year game.
I do too, yeah.
And aren't tired of each other. In fact, are just growing more obsessed with each other and playing games together, it seems.
Yeah. I mean, you are, yes, that is a great point. You are giving up being able to finish The Curse of Strahd in 6 months, possibly. If you follow these instructions.
We're savoring it, though.
But we're savoring it, number one. And number two, I don't care. I personally don't care. And I also have ADHD, so I've added 10 times more stuff than is actually raw.
You get a side quest, and you get a side quest, and you get a side quest.
And 4 years later.
Everybody gets a side quest.
Another big thing that can help out at the table is sharing the responsibilities. The DM takes on a lot. One person...
Maybe we should have watched this first.
I know. I've been thinking that multiple times.
Should not be responsible for every organizational task.
Yes.
And actually, if you are looking at our Twitter spread of all the people talking about this, Gnome Ann on Twitter retweeted our post with a whole list of why we should be more forgiving of the DM and help them share the tasks. And I think that that's a very important thing.
Yep, scheduling, managing initiative, miniatures, selecting music, note-taking, snacks. The Dungeon Master has a huge amount of mental load placed upon them, and we're going to talk in a future video about some specific tips for neurodiversity and Dungeon Masters.
Great.
But all of this to say is that there's a lot of responsibilities that players and DMs can share during the game.
If I am DMing, I refuse to schedule. The end. I like any in-person thing that I've ever run. I'm like, I'm not doing schedule. You tell me when to show up. I'm not doing it.
Put your foot down.
Best thing I've ever done for my mental health. Because if I had to wrangle you kittens and also write and run your adventures, forget about it.
Players can be responsible for tracking hit points, not even just for themselves, but like, well, one player could be tracking. If you got someone at your table that is really on the ball when it comes to map, why don't they track hit points for everybody? You could have someone who's responsible for tracking conditions and spell effects. You could have someone whose job it is to manage initiative for the entire table. If you have somebody that
Unless
feels
you're playing
comfortable and
Daggerheart.
competent doing that, that's a great way that they can help share the mental load across the entire table and make the experience better for everyone else.
I have a player at my table who loves taking notes and is very organized when they do it. During the session, I have them be in charge of taking notes, and at the beginning of every new session, I ask them to do the recap. It helps me out. It helps the whole table out. I usually have my own recap, but theirs is always better and more thorough. So having them be responsible for that saves me a lot of mental work that I struggle with.
And of course,
Yeah, I mean, this is really important, I think, and I think we've naturally fallen
done
into it. But do remember that your game master very possibly making something up, right? Like there's a high probability that they have prepped, but they're making up a name. They're making up a whole chapter of a possible world that you're going to end up in. And what if you have ADHD and you quit for the day? You're like, bye, everybody. And then you just walk off because you've got something else that's burning because you have ADHD and you've got to tackle that and do that thing. And many, many times I have not written down the stuff that I made up during a session. And at our official blessed Lord Keeper of Barovia, Matt Williams has always been there for me, right?
Yep.
Or Fitz.
of course, that recap effect can be really, really important because especially at remembering what's happening during the game. This can be particularly important if you've got a group that maybe only manages to play together once every couple of weeks or months. Having good notes and having that good recap can really be a good way of bringing people back into the game, and especially if that recap is written by one of the players at the table and then maybe shared in your Discord chat or a blog or some other way that people can access
Notion.
it in both written form and in addition to sharing it at the table. You might even opt to record your game sessions, maybe just using an audio recorder. I will say that since we started our actual play and we have a record of all of our game sessions, it's very, very handy being able to go back into the sessions and scrub through based on the visuals if I need to remind myself of something. It's even better when I don't remember when something specifically happened and I can go onto our Discord community and be like, hey, do you guys remember when this thing, like the time that Sebastian found that magic item, what episode was that in? And then, of course, amazingly helpful people from our community will be able to tell me very, very quickly. That is outsourcing the mental load and sharing the responsibilities to our community more broadly, and I so appreciate that. I recognize that not everybody has that, but you can get that effect in microcosm by simply having someone else responsible for taking notes. And if you do have the mental fortitude to record your game with audio and then listen back to that audio, it could be a big help.
One of the most important...
Sorry, I've got one more tip to add on to that. Yes, and that. There are now AI tools that do an incredible job. I think they're building them into Zoom at this point. If you record your Zoom, it will spit out a summary of what's happened. Notion will spit out a summary of something, anything recorded, Tana. And so you don't even have to worry about, I mean, it costs a little bit of money, but look, if you're trying to to keep moving and you want names and you want specifics, you could just, like they're saying, lo-fi record just the audio, dump it into Otter AI or something, let it spit out a transcription, and then you've got that permanently. Yeah, go for it.
Rules to follow at any table. This doesn't just go for tables with neurodivergent players, but having patience and empathy is important. We've talked on this channel before about things like how to think of your turn before it happens, or how to be a proper player and not make silly mistakes. But the truth of the matter is there are several neurodivergent traits that might come up that might force you to take longer on your turn. You need to read your abilities, sometimes even out loud. Counting dice can be a struggle. And noticing somebody who takes 10 minutes to figure out what they're doing on their turn, that might be because that's the way their brain needs to work. And again, if something has changed on the battlefield right before their turn, be even more forgiving. If everything was going well and then a wall blows up and 4 new ogres come in, and then you go, okay, it's your turn, what are you doing? And they're like, uh-oh, and they need to read over some of their abilities. That actually makes sense, and we should be forgiving and empathetic towards those people. If Monty is noticing that I have just rolled a crit with sneak attack with my rogue, and it's taking me 5 minutes to count up my dice, I hope he's not going to be like, why are you taking so long, Kelly? It's just simple math, because that's going to make me feel awful.
Yeah. There's this old school advice of dealing with people taking too long on their turns of like getting one of those sand timers and putting it down in front of them. And for a neurodivergent person with anxiety, that is a terrible idea. That will not solve the problem. That will simply make it worse. Yeah. And so it's really important to acknowledge that everyone has their limits and everyone is trying to do their best. Yeah. And by going in with that positive intent behind wanting everyone to have a better experience, rather than being like forcing rules on the operation at the table, you're going to create a more healthy environment at your game table. But by a similar token, some people may really struggle with role playing, or they might really struggle with focus. When I play, I have my laptop in front of me with all my character sheets and stuff, and inevitably at some point I might tune out and I might go on Reddit or something like that. It's just introvert Monty. And so for me, that patience and that empathy is really important. And sometimes it's better to respond not by snapping and say, hey, get back in it, but saying, hey, are you tuning out? Do you want to take a break?
I was just about to hit it too.
Okay, good. Yeah. Go, please.
Well, I was going to ask if you wanted an Alison woo-woo minute, Alison's woo-woo corner here on...
When do I not want an Alison woo-woo minute?
This kind of goes along with some things I've been working on in my personal life. I've been focusing on kind of 2 phrases for a while now. And the first one I think everybody already knows is, what's the best that can happen? I think that we are like hardwired to like assume worst case scenario. But I have noticed lately I have been a much happier person when I remember to say, like, to just look for the best in people, kind of to their point. Assume that everybody is doing their best at all moments, can radically change the way that you approach not only games, but anything. And then also, I saw this on TikTok recently, let them off the hook. That's like the phrase. And it goes, I think, like assuming the best in everything of just like, let them off the hook. If somebody's doing something little and piddly at the table that's annoying you, let them off the hook. Just let them off the hook. That's just how they are. Yeah. That goes along with empathy of just like, yeah, sometimes it takes people longer, or they have to use their fingers to add, or they get overstimulated and overwhelmed the more that they're rushed. Yeah. And that these are all tells that we all give the outside world all the time. But like, if we learn to pay attention to them, I think can really radically change our relationships in and around the table and world.
I love that so much, and I agree wholeheartedly. I will say they're probably about to talk about this, but I will also say that this does include your game master. I know that they're kind of speaking from game master to players or players to players, but I would say that there are very possibly things that your game master with ADHD is feeling if you are taking a very long time, and they're right, you're not supposed to. I mean, who's going to do that? That's horrible. But you could, if you're playing with neurodicey people, and you yourself are neurodicey, and you know this, and you can talk about it, and you feel. Keep talking about it at the table too. Yeah. Like I do get stressed out when combat takes a long time. I just start to get stressed out. It's not, to your point, it's not anyone's fault. I know that Fitz with OCD is like
yarn board.
Beautiful minding all the possibilities. And I don't get mad that they might take a longer time processing and doing that. I really don't. But I start worrying about other people at the table for her, which is not right. I'm not saying it's right, but maybe you could say little tricks and tips, ones that we have not implemented, but I would love to someday. It's just like, all right, so we know that we don't want to try to control or to limit or make Fitz uncomfortable with that kind of rule, like a timer. But what could Fitz do to also help you? Maybe roll the hit and damage dice at the same time. That's just like one small tiny thing that a player could also do, and doesn't infringe on anything about why there might be taking a time. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So rather than trying to snap someone back into the game, acknowledging that maybe it's time to step away and go into more of that break and find that energy again, find that focus again, rather than trying to force it to happen.
I also think that if somebody is taking a long time to make up their mind on their turn, rather than everybody sitting quietly at the table, staring at them, waiting for them to do something, I have found it incredibly helpful. And we've done this in our actual play, where Monty will be like, what spell are you thinking of using? Or what ability are you using right now? And having one of us read it out loud, asking the player's turn it is, being like, what are you struggling between? And they're like, I don't know if I should cast Fireball or Synaptic Static.
Yeah.
And you say, why don't you read both of them out loud? It actually engages the people at the table. Now the person is speaking, they're making the decision, they're working through it with the table. That's listening.
Great. Yeah.
And instead of everybody sitting in silence and it being awkward, actively engaging the player and saying, why don't you read the spell or ability or whatever it is you're looking at out loud? I found that so helpful and actually makes the game feel engaged.
And that's even better. Asking someone, what are you thinking of doing? Tell us about it. Is way better. If you're the type of like coach player that likes to help other people with their turn, asking that question rather than saying, Kelly, you should obviously be casting Fireball on this turn. Way better than just, again, putting that pressure on someone. It's better to meet them where they're at. In other words, be kind.
And while you're being kind, I think that all of these elements, all of these can be handled by setting the right expectations. Establishing expectations, routines, and safety tools.
I know we sound like broken records when we say this, but session zero.
Take a session zero.
Have a session zero. Have a session re-zero. We've done videos on these things.
Yeah, you can watch the videos on our session zero and our session re-zero. But
now we know the name of what we did.
Now it is.
The session re-zero.
Of course.
One of the important aspects is, especially if you're playing with a neurodivergent group, the people at the table, if they know that they're neurodivergent, should speak to that if they're comfortable doing so. I wish that I had been able to tell the table when we first started playing together that I was bad at math and to please give me the grace. They all accepted me and they knew that, but I still feel embarrassed sometimes when I'm rolling a lot of dice and taking a long time to count.
I discovered my RSD at the table.
Yeah.
Remember? Oh, yeah, that was, we've had an episode on that where like, I didn't know how triggered by RSD I was until I was experiencing it as my character and then went, whoa, wait a minute. I'm actually not reacting as my character right now. I'm reacting as Alison. I understand so much.
So true.
But it's helped me a lot to realize that that's okay that I'm like that. And I don't need to be better at math. I'm just a little slow at it. I can do it. It just takes me a minute.
And I'm totally comfortable sharing with a group that I am very introverted, and that I like to say for myself that I'm like a phone. When your phone is lit up, playing music and very animated, it seems very energized, but the battery's being drained when it's doing that. And eventually, the best thing for the phone is to get plugged in on the charger and just left alone. And for me, that's very much how.
Nobody believes me when I say that about myself. Nobody.
That's got to be really hard. And I've been thinking about this whole video so far because he's mentioned it a couple of times being introverted, and after meeting him in real life, there's no question about that. But how difficult is it? And this doesn't have to apply to people on YouTube that have great channels. This could apply to the dungeon master that you play with every week, the player that you play with every week. It doesn't have to be Monty and Kelly. You don't know if they are an introvert and they're slowly but surely draining you don't know this. But they come out and they're playing a part and they are energized. It's not that they are, but you gotta make sure that you are also, still kind of keeping it within boundaries.
Some of us are really good at masking.
Oh God.
My energy and my mental focus operates is that I can be very on and I can be very animated. But eventually I need to take the breaks and I need to be alone to recharge myself. And so it took me a long time to realize that was how I operated in terms of my mental energy, because I was like, why am I always exhausted? I have so much fun with other people.
After a D&D game, I need an hour or two of like brain shut-off time because I've just exerted a lot of myself. Yeah. And that goes for being a player or being a DM.
I need the ramp-up time beforehand as well. Like before I run a game, I really need like my own inner focus time to kind of get my mental track set properly.
We talk about session 0 being used to establish the rules of the game, who everybody's playing, and all of those, but it should also be a place to discuss what are the needs of everybody at this table. Because if one person says, yeah, I'm fine with blasting music while we're playing. Heck, throw on some metal while we're playing D&D.
Please don't do that.
And another person is like, I cannot play D&D if that's happening. You might want to address it and say, is everybody cool if we don't include music?
Yeah.
And making sure that everybody is in a space where they can get the best out of the game. Again, what can you do and what can't you do? There are some elements where maybe I will have to realize that I can be a little bit more forgiving if I'm not a big fan of music, but I can tolerate it. And I'm in a group that says, can we play music? I'll say, yeah, okay. But if Monty's at the table and he says, no, I really can't, then I'm okay not having music at the table as well.
And people are going to communicate in different ways. People have different ways of communicating around comfort levels and eye contact. And ultimately, people also have different levels of privacy and what they're willing to share and what they know about themselves and what they're willing to share too. When you're having these session 0 conversations, not everybody at the table might be confident or feel safe disclosing if they have an like something like ADHD or autism, or if they are using medication for any of those conditions. They might not necessarily want to disclose that to their group, particularly if it's a group of strangers. So having that empathy and that safety there and that understanding allows these conversations to happen while also respecting everybody's privacy.
So that brings us to the end of our video, but there are a few important tips and advice and additional help that I want to point out. First of all, we mentioned before that we posted on Twitter about tips and tricks for neurodivergent DMs. We're going to be doing another video next week that is going to be specifically about DM prep for neurodivergent DMs. So you can stay tuned for that. But if you want to get a look at a great thread of comments that are all really helping each other out, go over to our Twitter and check that out. I'm also going to mention that Ginny D recently did a video about playing D&D with ADHD, and it's a great video for further examining this topic.
Finally, there's a great thesis by Kayla Valoroso Jones published in 2021 called Neurodiversity, Dungeons and Dragons, A Guide to Transforming and Enriching TTRPGs for Neurodivergent Adults. aka the Neurodivergent Player's Handbook. We'll have a link to that whole thesis in the description because Caleb's research is very exhaustive and goes into a lot of detail and strategies for introducing the game and playing the game that is much more, I would say, academically rigorous than our video here today. So if you want more rigor than that, that's a great resource worth checking out.
Finally, once again, next week, we're going to be doing a video for helpful tips for DMs for game prep. Included in that video, we are going to actually quote a lot of the great comments that we got from our community that really helped us out in understanding the diverse array of neurodiversity. If you have tips that go beyond this video, once again, we are not experts on these topics. We are merely sharing our advice. But like the Twitter thread, what I would love everybody watching this video to do is tell us your best tips for playing D&D with neurodiversity and leave a comment about that. What I would love to see happen is that...
Or make a reaction video.
That anybody watching this video who is taking some things away and is neurodivergent can then head to the comments section and get a long list of possible helpful advice that might suit them. With the broad range of neurodiversity, I think it's really important that we accept the fact that no tip is going to be right for everyone. Person.
Yep.
And so the things that we've talked about here might work for you and they might not. So what's your best advice? Let us know in the comments below.
The videos that we create on our channel are made possible thanks to the incredible generosity of our Patreon supporters. If you'd like to join our Patreon community and discuss more of these ideas, follow the links down below.
And if you want to see a bunch of neurodivergent weirdos playing D&D, you can check out our actual play in the Worlds of Drakkenheim, which airs Tuesday evenings right here on YouTube. You can check out all the previous episodes right up over here.
And our latest book, Monsters of Drakkenheim, is now on Kickstarter. If you want to support the channel even further and support our amazing world even further, find the links down below to the Kickstarter.
Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and ring that bell so that you never miss an episode.
Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time
in the dungeon.
Bye, you guys.
Yay!
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Man, God,
Yeah.
It is a good time to have ADHD, let me tell you.
It is. It's a good time to be playing TTRPGs. It's a good time to
Really is.
be neurodivergent.
Finally.
I want to go back in time and hug child Alison and child Matt.
Yeah.
Let him know it's all going to work out. It's all going to be okay. The things, that it's a feature, not a bug, right? Like the things that we struggled with, we're getting a handle on now, and we're realizing that we're not alone and we're part of a big, diverse, beautiful community of people interested in sharing and developing that empathy.
It's so much about that. It's so, whether you're introverted or not, it is so much about feeling that you're not alone.
Yep.
I mean, TTRPGs is an amazing world that you can join to find fellow people that enjoy the same thing. And then ADHD is too. Well, obviously it's not a death sentence. It's a thing. It's a thing.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
That's a weird way to end.
That's a weird way to end.
Well, how can I change that?
Well, no, we're leaving it. This is the way our brains work, Matt, and it's darling, and people need to see it. I think that the more, true. I mean, that's exactly it, right? The more authentically you can show up in this world for yourself and for other people, we can all sniff, the fakers. We all know.
Oh my God. Look at these guys. These guys, I can't help but watch them or watch any kind of editing or camera movement or just, no, it's just dungeon dudes sitting together on a table, very little editing, practically done, and just and even the editing that does exist is it's just them so real. It's just so real, and I feel like that's who they are as people, and that's what they're going to produce. And yet, look at them. We went from Jenny D highly, highly, highly beautiful produced
Yeah.
changes of scenes and music and all this stuff.
But that's
to-
authentically her. Like
that's authentically her. Yeah.
she is, and that's what's so beautiful is that there's so many different ways to distill this information.
Yes. Yeah. There's room for everybody, and we can all get along. And
Listen,
please.
we will keep our tables small and our communities broad.
Ooh. Wow. Check.
How about that?
Done.
Done. Well, thank you for watching this video with me, Matt.
Yeah, I guess we'll do this next week.
Do you know what this is? Do you know what this is? I just realized this is the second one we've done. Well, absolutely. Jenny D promised more for Dungeon Masters. Dungeon Dudes have promised more. This is body doubling. This is one of our favorite. It just hit me. But this is one of the best ways that Matt and I have learned to work with our ADHD is especially on these tasks, but it can be any task. You don't necessarily have to do them together, but just that presence of another person. Yeah. And there are websites out there now for body doubling. And I'm wondering now how we can bring like a TTRPG bend into this. Maybe we need to start like body doubling channels in our Discord where and we've kind of started doing that a little bit this week with the Daggerheart study halls, right?
We have.
Like you come in, you have the camera or the mic there if you need it, but really you're on mute, I'm on mute, and we're working. But just that safety and knowing someone's there with you. Or there's body doubling like this where you're doing a task simultaneously.
Together.
This was a task that we wanted to do, but just hadn't found the time to do
We had not taken the time to do it. Someday there will be a bingo card, that an ADHd20 bingo card where one of the little squares is Matt mentions Mike Shea, but I'm about to mention Mike Shea. So bingo.
Ding dang.
I think that's partly why I've been attracted to his Sunday morning Twitches where he preps his game for that day and then releases it. It's it is body doubling. And I didn't even think about that until you mentioned it. Why is he doing it? He's body doubling.
He's body doubling.
He gets the energy of doing it.
Yeah.
You're good.
You good. We good.
You good.
Amazing. All right.
This is fun. All right.
This is fun. Well,
until next week, everybody.
Until next time. Thank you guys. And join our Patreon and Discord in the links below. Are we supposed to be doing more of that? We'll get better at it.
Yeah, we'll do it. We'll do it.
We're not the Dungeon Dudes.
If you got a couple, after you support the Dungeon Dudes and Jenny D, after you support them, and you got a couple of bucks, come on over.
Yep. Amazing. All right. Well, thank you, Matt.
Thanks, Kai.
I'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.
Amazing.
Or Fitz.
Aww.
Damn it.
Or Fitz. She's so getting this blooper.
Or Fitz. Okay. There's only a couple more tries. Or Fitz. Okay. I'm go. Sorry. I changed all of my buttons, and I don't remember.
Why would you do that, Matt? Why would you do that?
I'm trying to downsize. I'm trying to take Monty and Kelly's advice, and I'm downsizing my gear, but it is the same thing. It's just a lot smaller, and I don't have my usual button for Fitz. It's just moved it around.